for Thursday, October 11th, 2018. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com.
Look at that fucking squirrel with that big bird.
That is not the right version, Kishore. I
hate this application.
Oh my goodness.
I hate Jeremy being here.
You know what? I can't work under these conditions.
These are conditions in which you cannot work.
My writer has very specific stipulations about the music to be played at the start of every episode.
Wow. Well, welcome to the show this week, and as you surely have guessed, we have a different lineup. I'm Norm, of course, and joined to my immediate left, not Jeremy Williams, who's out on vacation. It's Kishore Hari.
I'm a pale imitation of Jeremy Williams.
And
I'm not Jeremy. I'm Will.
Back on the podcast after quite a long hiatus, the dubstepper, the master dubstepper.
That's what people say. They call me Mr. Dubstep. That's what they call me.
First name Mr., last name Dubstep.
Yeah, I'm Skrillex's long lost uncle.
So Kishore is running the audio this week, so be warned. Some of our musical intros, it'll all be fixed in post. Let's just assume, hey Norm, in the future, congratulations, you're fixing the music.
So
I'm knocking on the table for the Adobe Premiere gods not to mute me for the entire podcast like they like to do.
Yep.
When I make a mistake on Still Untitled, you leave it in for comic value, I think.
Oh, there is some comic value.
But when Kishore makes a mistake over here, you're going to fix it. He just says he's going to fix that in post. He's not really going to fix it in post.
We'll see. That will be the big question for you out there. We started this podcast 3 times. This is the fourth. This is the fourth one after 3 failure to launches. Ooh, too soon.
Oh,
we'll get to that.
Topical.
Too soon.
We'll get to that. How are you guys doing?
I'm awesome. How about you?
I'm doing okay. It's good to actually be back in San Francisco.
Were you not in San? Oh, that's right.
We were in New York this weekend.
Oh wow!
I was with you.
This has been a long week, and we'll talk about all the events, everything that we've been doing as we jump into our top story.
As we leap into.
This is almost right.
That's not too bad.
Top story this week.
No,
I think your audio input just is missing the vocal track.
It's missing like one channel.
Yeah, the channel for voices.
We actually troubleshooted this with Jeremy, and he figured out what.
He did.
I can't remember what it is.
I know what it is. You need to downmix it to mono, because what's happening is the vocals on one track and the others on the other track, maybe.
Will is smart. He deals in technology.
I'm a technologist.
Anyway, we are top stories this week. The first thing we're talking about is a little bit of New York Comic Con. Kishore, you and I were both there in New York. That was merely days ago, less than 1 week ago, and yet it feels like months ago.
But look, there's a lot of interesting stuff that happens in New York Comic Con, I'm sure. But what's the most important thing, or what was your eating situation?
The eating situation. Oh, we didn't talk about that on Still Untitled. The eating situation. Well, a lot of convention food. I ate a lot, unfortunately, just because of the busyness of it all. Had a lot of convention food.
A lot of hot dogs. You got like
we
dogs?
actually had Korean convention food, which was a new twist.
Yeah. The bottom floor of the Jacob Javits Center is pretty decent food. You want to shell out $15 for a bulgogi beef bowl? That's fine. We'll do
great.
that. But for one of the evenings, Kishore, you, me, Joey, and Kate were able to go to one of your favorite Korean restaurants in New York.
It's an upscale Korean fare called Attaboy, Atoboy, not to be confused with Attaboy, Attaboy, which just serves cocktails, not Korean food. And I almost made that mistake.
Yeah,
it wouldn't have been that bad.
You had recommended this to us last time when I went with Danica for our baby moon, and it was delicious. It's a prefix menu kind of thing where you choose 2 items from each of the courses, and then with 4 people we were basically able to sample the entire menu, small plates, so Korean tapas.
My favorite Korean place in New York is a place called Kanghodong Baekjeong.
Okay.
Which is a Korean barbecue.
A butchering of the Korean language.
Yeah, I did that badly. I apologize. I'm hearing clicking sounds from somewhere.
I'm sure it's
me.
It's Kishore's fault. But no, it's a Korean barbecue, and the chef there is the former meat chef from Momofuku. I think from Ko. So the pork, you get pork belly that you Korean barbecue, and it is delicious, and it's open until like 3:00 in the morning, which is cool.
Nice.
It's by the Empire State Building.
Oh, so like just on the edge of Koreatown.
It's like 25th and 5th Ave or something like that.
We also had some late night halal guys cart.
Yeah. Yes. All in the same evening after we had basically
a good
wrapped
night.
for most of our filming. We got Korean food, walked around, found a delightful cocktail bar that was inspired by Oscar Wilde, where the bartender for one of the drinks that you and Joey ordered did this thing, took a piece of cinnamon, like a roll of cinnamon, put it on a stick, burned it, and then put a glass above it so all the cinnamon smoke would be in the glass.
Grant Crilly at Chef Steps did that for a cocktail that he made me when I was there.
Right, and then all the smoke filled the glass, then put a funnel in there, poured the cocktail in there, shook it up, and then poured that back out, and then burned another piece of cinnamon to put in the cocktail. Very smoky.
So when Grant did it, he burnt the stick and left it burning, and then put the glass on top of it, so that the basically the cinnamon fire burnt out all of the oxygen under the glass.
Right.
And then he made the drink and poured it in there, and you ended up with a really smoky cinnamon taste that was kind of completely unique in my experience. What was the drink? Was it a Winston?
It was an old fashioned.
Oh, okay.
And so it was very unique, and it was just really on the nose and not so much like infused throughout the entire drink. So it was kind of perfect.
I want to also give a big shout out to a lot of the people who said hi to us. We had a lot of viewers and listeners of this podcast who came up to us at New York Comic Con, and thank you so much. We love meeting you in person. And one listener in particular got me tickets or invited me out to a really cool thing, which was King Kong on Broadway. It was the first night of previews. I want to give a specific shout out.
Did you get to go?
I got to go.
Oh, that's awesome.
Disney Dan, who runs a YouTube channel documenting the clothing of Disney characters throughout the history of Disney theme parks, runs the DisneyDan.com, sent me a message and had tickets, and I guess his family couldn't go. So this was opening of previews night. The King Kong show on Broadway, if you hadn't heard of it, is an import from Australia. Creature Effects Technology Company. I forget the exact name of the company, but they did the dinosaurs show where the puppeteers, people inside the dinosaur costumes, like the Walking with Dinosaurs show.
Okay.
And they developed over the past 10 years a 20-foot tall King Kong stage puppet to design a show around, in which I believe a company of 10 performers puppet King Kong in real time by jumping on his back and lifting arms, and his face is controlled with animatronics, just high-grade servos, for which a puppeteer remotely in the balcony looks at King Kong and puppeteers the face. And so they brought this show, I guess ran its course in Australia, brought it over to the United States, and they got a bunch of like famous poster artists. Like Ali Moss did a poster for this, which is front and center in all the advertising. And I think it opens in like 2 or 3 months, I want to say, for opening night. But these are previews. Nothing broke. Technically, the show was incredible, and it was really cool to see that giant puppet on stage. Sci-Fi Wired just did a big feature story about the puppet and how they rehearse with it. How it's like, you know how you have like a Pinocchio-style puppet, you have a crossbar that you hold. There's a technical
marionette.
Sure, yeah, marionette that you. But all the strings are attached to. So they essentially have that on these trusses above the stage, but that bar itself is on like a 2-axis system, so it can actually move around the stage a little bit.
A ton of people moving that around then.
Yeah, 10 people in full black costume, like the fittest dudes from Australia, are literally they climb the back of King Kong. There are these bars on him, and they will do things like lift his shoulders, lift his arms, or people underneath, and then they literally jump off while holding the puppeteering wire, and their weight as they jump off of King Kong onto the ground lifts up one of the arms.
It's like a little Cirque du Soleil.
Totally.
Little bit. Does the puppet pick up the girl?
It does.
Wow.
Yep. They're fully interactive. You know, the lead actress does full interactions. It's based on just the book, so it's not based on the
like
Peter
rip her head
Jackson
off or anything like that.
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's the King Kong, the friendship, right? So, I don't. I mean, I think in terms of previews, they don't want people to review the film or review the musical. But it's a musical. There's songs and dance and all these numbers. But King Kong is really the thing.
What
we
a
wanna be there
review.
for.
Dr. Zayas.
Yeah, I don't want. I don't
Wait,
want.
that's a different one.
They're working through it. They're working through the Broadway show.
What's your favorite King Kong version, guys?
I really like the Peter Jackson King Kong.
I didn't. Peter Jackson one isn't for me. I'm old school. I like the old King Kong. I love the kind real.
Fair.
I feel like that's a piece of Americana.
It is, and most recently there was of course the King Kong Skull Island film,
Which was great.
I think it was delightful.
Really?
I really liked it.
Yeah, it's
I did
it's
not
not a
watch
traditional King Kong story. It's a war movie. It's a Vietnam War movie.
It's Apocalypse Now meets King Kong.
That's exactly what it is. With a King Kong that is giant.
Oddly, that sounds great.
It's very colorful. The cinematographer Larry Fong did Watchmen, so you have a lot of the very punchy colors.
It's a period
saturated
piece.
colors.
It's
Yep.
set in like post-Vietnam.
So you have all the musical flair of that era, and Brie Larson and Tom Hiddleston kind of really hammered it up as like pulp heroes in that film.
Yeah, it had a real Romancing the Stone vibe with like Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas.
Yeah. And that, of course, is going to converge with the Godzilla franchise. This is kind of the legendary studios Godzilla thing. We're getting too close into pop culture territory, so we're going to continue with what other things happened. Any other notable things in New York we want to talk about?
No, I think we covered it mostly in Still Untitled. Like I was there really looking at the costumes. We talked a lot about the floor. I think there's going to be a lot of videos from the actual floor. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go to very many panels. Where a lot of the news broke, but I think you get it. It was fun.
Yeah, and we'll talk about some of that news in pop culture. The other big news, top story this week, is after getting back from New York, I immediately jumped on an airplane to head down to L.A. to go to LeapCon. Now, I know there's the joke out there about
Leap
the
into
con,
cons.
or the LeapCon.
It's the
being
leap year
conned
next year.
into investing into augmented reality. But it's the Magic Leap conference, the first ever, sold out. 1,500 people went there, and 2 days where they kind of rolled out. The headset's been available for 3 months, but they rolled out the software, what developers that they had partnered with and funded had been working on in these couple of years. A wide-ranging number of applications, from games, from folks like What a Workshop and Wingnut AR, to Wayfair for furniture stuff, to travel, Air New Zealand, and some in-house projects as well. But the biggest thing was the big unveiling of the Dr. Garborg Invaders game, the What a Game Shop game, that was based on the Greg Broadmoor art world that he created of Dr. Garborg. And the game's out now. Anyone who has a Magic Leap can get it for free, and it is not worth paying $2,500 for, but I want to play it again and again.
Okay.
I only played that 10 minutes, and it's an AR game, right? So you scan your room, and then portals open up on your walls. Some portals that look like the size of manholes and that bugs crawl out of.
Oh, this was the trailer from a couple of years ago that was kind of cooked a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
This is that was their proof of concept, and this is what came out of it.
Huh.
And then the portals can be as big as a doorway, a little door where if you are 8 feet from it, you can see the whole door, and you can kind of peer around. So there's parallax, and your hand is a gun, and then you are firing into the other world.
Did you try to walk into the walls to look?
I went up close, and
Okay.
the field of view is such that when you walk up close, it becomes vignetted, so you don't see the full door. So there's like an optimal distance.
Oh, okay.
You need to be from the door where it'll fill up the field of view for the door. And I think in the later levels, people are saying, because people have beat it already, like your whole wall opens up.
But it's just a shooting gallery.
It's a
basically.
shooting gallery.
Okay.
But
How long did you get to play for?
I got to play for 15 minutes, like 10 to 15
that's
minutes.
a decent amount of time.
And played one out of the 4 levels, but it felt like a real game. It was super polished. Yeah.
So, like, compared to Robo Recall?
Robo Recall different, right? Because
Yeah.
Robo Recall, but very much the same, like the same
Like
feeling
shooting
you
gallery.
get. Shooting gallery.
Okay.
Very much, I would say maybe a little more like Space Pirate Trainer in terms of
Okay.
the kind of fun you've had, because it's full 360. You're kind of standing one spot, dodging as the robots enter your world. It's really easy to kill them, but you can have fun by shooting off their limbs, and like you bring a lot to the game more than, which is what I think is one of the strengths of AR. And we'll talk a little bit more about the announcements from LeapCon over when we get to the VR Minute. But shall we move on to some pop culture news? Let's hold our ears.
There we go.
Pop culture news.
Yeah, I'm going to fix this in post.
It turns out that not having physical buttons for things like volume control might be a negative, huh?
I don't know how Jeremy does it.
So in terms of pop culture, a lot of movies out this week. Big box office this past weekend. Venom made $80 million at the box office, despite a 29% a positive review score on Rotten Tomatoes. And Bradley Cooper's directorial debut with A Star Is Born starring Lady Gaga made $45 million. So a lot of great movies in theaters. But we have another big release coming out this week, which is First Man. And Will,
Yes.
you got to see First Man.
I saw it on Tuesday night.
All right. So
You were one of the first
I was
men.
one of the first
First
men
there-
to see First Man.
First Man. Without spoiling the movie, and
What, they make it
we
to the
know-
moon. We
I know,
get it.
The moon,
Like-
Yeah.
it happened.
They
It's in the trailer.
survive,
Yeah, that's
guys.
right. He comes back. What did you think of the film?
I liked it a lot. I thought it was really neat. There were a couple things that I didn't like, but it was. You should know going in that it is not like a raw space movie in the same way that Apollo 13 or The Right Stuff or even maybe Gravity is. Like it's much more about Neil Armstrong as a father and a husband and an astronaut and a guy, just a relatively normal human being who lived through extraordinary circumstances, than about like there is not a moment where they have to science the shit out of anything, right? Like there's not a we have this round filter and this square box and we dump all the parts, we have to figure out how to connect them moment. It is not that movie at all. It is very much a biopic about Neil Armstrong, who is, I think, one of the more interesting of the early astronauts in terms of, like, he was a civilian, he was an engineer first and then ended up being a test pilot, and it starts with him as a test pilot in Northern California flying X-15s, and it goes through the immediate aftermath of the moon landing, and it's very much about his relationship with his kids and his wife and his friends.
So
And
this movie doesn't overly lionize him like we've done since the moon landing.
I would say it does not even, the portrayal, when Gina and I went and saw it, when we walked out, she said, I kind of don't like Neil Armstrong very much after watching this movie. And I think that's fair. I think the point that they're trying to make, because it's directed by Damien Chazelle, who made La La Land and Whiplash. And the point is that, like, the choices, like the choice to be one of these astronauts in the first, second, and third waves, the people who ended up being on the Apollo missions, it was such an all-consuming job that there were sacrifices made in literally every other part of their lives. And I think that becomes really clear. And I think the thing that this movie makes really clear is that they probably didn't understand that when they signed up.
I mean, it was wartime, and we don't think about that
Yeah.
historically like that now.
It is very clear. Like one of there's a moment, and this isn't a spoiler if you know the history, but there's a moment when they're at a barbecue. Like they it seemed like they were working 6 days a week, 6.5 days a week, and then Sunday afternoons they always had a barbecue.
Huh.
And
Which is very similar to how they portrayed The Right Stuff.
Yeah, it is. So this takes a lot of the things from The Right Stuff, the portrayal of astronauts as a culture and as a vocation, and the training and all that, and it takes the impact on family life that you see a little bit of in Apollo 13, and blows a lot of that stuff out in a way. Like it's a fascinating movie. I can't wait to watch it again. It is not the kind of NASA space porn that you want to see, that you expect if you're thinking about Apollo 13 or one of those movies, and all the way down to the fact that when it's shot in a cockpit, and I can't wait to actually talk to Adam about this after he's seen it, because he's actually spent time in fighter jets and U-2s. Like those sequences are shot in a way that makes them feel unbelievably claustrophobic, which I know has to be an intentional choice, but it was hard to watch sometimes on the big screen. Like instead of seeing a sweeping shot of like the astronaut in the cockpit and the control panel and the sweep of the Earth around them, or the exterior of the capsule, even, you see an incredibly close up tight shot on a single dial on the control panel, or just a glance at the mirror that is reflecting out of the side of the capsule so he can see behind them when they're taking off in the Gemini capsule or whatever it happens to be. It's really well done, and the costumes and the props and the sets are gorgeous, but you don't get to see as much of them as I would have liked.
So this isn't the story of the moon landing. This is the story of Neil Armstrong.
It is the story of the moon landing, but it is Neil Armstrong's. It's the story about the first man who goes to the moon and who that man is, right?
And that's probably going to make people a little uncomfortable because it kind of pokes holes into the story that we often tell ourselves about that.
If the story, what was the Norman Rockwell, the Moonfire book? What's it called? The Time Life book that's the photos. It's the collected.
Is it Moonfire?
It's Moonfire, I think. It's like a large format coffee table book that collects the photos from life, the photos from NASA, and tells the story of the first moon landing. And it's a hagiography, right? You see these people as the very best of us, which they undoubtedly were. But this movie portrays the more, shows the human impact of this life and the sacrifices that these men made. And I think it's a good thing. It doesn't.
I'm oddly more excited about it when you describe it that way because we've gotten the other film.
Yeah,
like The Right Stuff exists. Apollo 13 exists.
It's the kind of history that can only be told after maybe the participants are gone, and it doesn't whitewash things like a T-38 crash that kills a couple of astronaut candidates. It doesn't whitewash, it depicts much like Steve Jobs, the David Fincher Steve Jobs movie hits 3 key product launches in Jobs' life. This hits, Neil Armstrong as X-15 pilot, Neil Armstrong as Gemini commander.
Similarly structurally.
It is similar structurally, but the Apollo 1 tragedy, the fire, is depicted in a very clear, forthright, brutal way, and it's hard to watch. We were there with Ariel. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I knew this was coming. When we saw Apollo 1 plugs out test, I was like, okay, here it is. And it is clear that it was awful, and it doesn't hide that was an awful, awful tragedy.
Danny Boyle's Steve Jobs movie.
Danny Boyle's Steve Jobs movie, yeah.
And we will, I just want to acknowledge this. We're going to talk about what happened on the Soyuz today while we're recording this a little later on. I mean, it's hard to talk about this in the context of we literally had 2 astronauts have to crash land on Earth a few hours ago.
Yeah.
And it just makes it more poignant to talk about what happened in that.
Mid-flight abort are 3 of the scariest words I've ever heard.
I'm excited to see it.
All right. Well, another movie that... Oh, actually, we'll be talking more about First Man, of course, next week, in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I was just going to... If you like space, if you're a space aficionado, this is a movie for you. It is. If you are interested in space a little bit, maybe not.
Just more than a little bit.
Yeah.
How about if you're a fan of Ryan Gosling?
Look, Ryan Gosling is a baller in everything he makes, as far as I'm concerned.
Does the Ryan Gosling... As the last thing I'll ask is, does the Ryan Gosling-ness of him get in the way of the movie? He
portrays Neil Armstrong as intensely focused and very kind of quiet, but still waters run deep is the thing, the cliche.
So there's no "Hey girl" moments.
He does not "Hey girl" anyone.
Good.
All right.
He loves his family very much.
And we'll be, of course, talking more about First Man in the coming weeks after we've all seen it. And you out there have hopefully had a chance to see it. On to other pop culture news. Big shakeups in the Marvel/DC.
They're going to do a crossover?
No crossover. I don't think that's ever going to happen. What a thing.
When Marvel starts to slump and DC's on the rise.
Yeah. Don't say never. The trajectory is going on, Marvel will buy DC soon.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I know that hurt a lot of people.
I don't think they would, just to spite DC. WB, with the pride of Warner Brothers, would not allow that to happen.
I'm going to tell you a secret about people who own studios, and that is that they like making money.
They like money.
Yeah. And if the money situation works itself out, it'll be fine.
Yeah,
I think Captain Marvel and Captain Marvel.
It's true. There's both those movies coming out. But of course, James Gunn was fired from directing Guardians of the Galaxy 3, a movie that's now on hold, even though he turned in a script for it. And the reports this week from Hollywood Reporter is that WB, Warner Brothers, has now hired James Gunn to write Suicide Squad 2, a reboot of Suicide Squad and potentially direct Suicide Squad 2.
I feel like the punishment for him is just continuing. This is mean. What
No.
DC is doing.
Suicide
No.
Squad is a place he could do good.
It made a ton of money. It's a rated R franchise.
What has been up till now.
And I think they would. I mean, it made so much money as a first rated R movie. And for him to soft reboot it, I bet they'll probably keep the fan favorites. They'll keep Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
And they'll keep Joker. Sorry, probably not Will Smith. I don't think Will Smith's coming back for Suicide Squad.
Will Smith
2.
was the draw on the first one.
Was he really?
Yeah.
But Deadshot's kind of a critical Suicide Squad
Yeah.
character.
We'll
Because he's
see.
usually the anchor in the Suicide Squad stories.
Well, Dave Bautista has already expressed at least interest on Twitter in joining the Suicide Squad. So he could be cross
Maybe he's the
cross
good guy.
universes. Maybe he is the one. He's the Daywalker. He'll be the one that bring the two worlds together. And a lot of speculation as who they would potentially who could be portrayed. Who Dave Bautista could portray, like maybe a Solomon Grundy.
Yeah.
I would go with a Killer Croc.
Clayface.
No, Killer Croc.
Why
They had a
Why
Killer
put him
Croc
under all
already.
that
Killer
makeup?
Croc was in the first Suicide Squad.
What, really?
Yeah, it was a terrible portrayal of Killer Croc. Who is it that there was someone?
You want a bad one? King Shark.
Ooh, no. Amazo.
What's Amazo? I don't even know
Oh.
who Amazo is.
Yeah, Dave Bautista as Amazo would do it. James Gunn, do it.
Amazo's like a artificial intelligence robot that can absorb powers.
Evil Vision,
Oh, okay. Rogue, but a robot.
but a robot with
A rogue
the
bot?
same type of like Widow's Peak head helmet and very very buff.
Huh.
So it would fit the physique.
why not
Oftentimes
Clayface?
emotionally stunted. Clayface
Clayface-
is kind of interesting
Yeah.
too. I think that's hard to imagine on the screen. Like they have to be some thought around
Yeah.
how to do that.
Anyway, I am this just has now piqued my curiosity. Now I want to see this movie happen.
Dave Bautista's become a favorite of mine. Like
Yeah.
he's
a
good in everything.
delightful human being.
Yeah, seems like a wonderful
I
man.
feel like he's also just owns his spots. Like he doesn't none of his characters overdo it. He kind of operates within the boundaries that he knows he can do.
he's not doing any weird eyebrow acting either, which is nice.
No, very stoic
Yeah.
in some
Yeah.
cases. All right, moving on. Other big news this week. Now we all know Toys R Us went bankrupt and liquefied all of its stores and assets. But
Wow,
the
really?
brand, the owners of the brand, are apparently going to bring it back as potential pop-ups in other stores just in time for the holiday season because they still have, I guess, some connection to the supply chain for toys, and they still have some of their brands, and they're renaming it Jeffrey's Toy Box. Not really Toys R Us, is it?
That name is
All of
problematic.
this is bad.
Yeah.
This is all bad.
R.I.P. all the Toys R Us kids.
Also, they spelled Jeffrey the giraffe way. I find. Sorry, G Jeffs. I'm a J Jeff guy.
Well, very uneventful then. We'll see if it pops up in your local Montgomery ward. This holiday
Are they going to be in
season.
Sears?
I think they're going to be pop-ups in places like those. I don't know
Wait, Sears
exactly
went
where.
bankrupt today, I thought.
Everything's going back.
Oh,
Look,
no.
I'm going to go let me tell you a story about
Tough
a
to be in
company called
retail.
Amazon.
What now? I've never heard of this.
Yeah. Well, it's the new Sears Roebuck.
On to some content, television content specifically. 3 big pieces of news. We'll start with something that's furthest away from production, which is that Ridley Scott has signed on with TNT to direct a series called Raised by Wolves. Now, the concept of this, let me pitch it to you, is a world where androids run the Earth, and 2 androids have to raise a human child.
So the androids are the wolves.
The androids are the wolves.
Huh.
It's Wuthering Heights, but with robots.
Wait a minute.
Wuthering Heights. No.
What is
Wuthering
my
Heights is a
understanding of
tale
Wuthering Heights is very
consumption
different.
and love. It's a Charlotte Bronte.
But isn't there like a boy that's raised by a wolf in that one?
No.
That's
What am I-
Rudyard. That's Jungle Book.
No.
It's a Rudyard Kipling.
What am I thinking of?
Jungle Book.
No, I'm not thinking of Jungle Book.
You're literally thinking
I'm
of Jungle
not
Book.
literally not thinking of Jungle Book.
Heathcliff is he's from the bad side of the tracks in Victorian England, not raised by wolves.
There are very few androids in Wuthering Heights, as I recall.
I
too.
mean, look, Heathcliff is kind of a android type. He's a little stoic. I don't know. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb here and say that the last few things that I've seen from Ridley Scott didn't really strike my fancy. So maybe TV will be good for him.
I like what TNT is doing though with these prestige miniseries that they experiment for one season. I think they did it with Dakota Fanning and two other actors, Daniel Bruhl, and they did the one with Tom Hardy, I believe. And if they do well, then they'll continue them
Series
on.
it out.
Yeah, and it's getting hopefully some good actors and some very talented creative folks together to just tell a long form story.
It's what HBO did with Pretty Little Lies. They've done adaptations, so they did Pretty Little Lies and Sharp Objects, where they start out as a single standalone, and then when it does well, they're like, well, shit, we have to figure out how to make more of these.
All right, I will be looking forward to it. Moving on, something even closer to production, though not exactly in production yet, is, of course, the Star Trek Picard series for CBS All Access. Now, I think over New York Comic Con, they were promoting Star Trek Discovery, and some of the people who are now part of that brain trust that are running Star Trek for CPS did some interviews and talked about how they would be going into production April 2019. I think even Sir Pat Stew tweeted a photo showing the writers' room and them getting together. So still a little ways out from production, which means we probably won't see the show until end of 2019 at the very earliest.
Or if it's on the normal CBS Star Trek schedule, sometime in 2022.
Let's hope
It'll
for
be
let's hope
before
for
that.
Andy. Let's hope that Discovery season 2 is like the first half of 2019, their big push.
Okay.
And then the Picard show is their big push at the end of the year.
Did you guys like Discovery?
I did.
I never
I
watched
like
it.
parts.
Okay.
I think it has its moments. I didn't love the Klingon treatment, but the some of the character development was great. You have to not be wedded to Star Trek as a core for this. I mean, like if you like old, like optimistic Star Trek, this is not the show for you.
What if I like Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto Star Trek?
Then it's similar flavors here and
Okay.
there, but it's not those actors and it's not
Obviously.
that world. So, it's
This
strange.
takes place in the prime. These are both prime timeline.
prime timelines in
Okay.
pre-TOS era.
Okay.
So people expecting a Kirk and Spock, well, they're going to get a Spock, but they're not, and they're going to get a Pike, but it's not going to be people.
Kirk's gonna be like 3.
Kirk's going to be a teenager.
Yeah.
I think so far in this
Listen to
one.
Beastie
Vulcans
Boys.
can grow beards. It's canon now.
That's right. So
Wait, what?
anyway, the other big news with Star Trek, the Picard show, is that the producers confirmed they are thinking of this as not just a mini-series, one season spinoff, is that they were thinking of this in multiple seasons.
But this is like
Wow.
I don't know.
this is like Picard, Jean-Luc Picard Detective Agency, right? This is like he retires and becomes a private detective.
We hope so.
Space archaeologist, we're hoping.
We're hoping
that'd be
space
good.
archaeologist.
Flautist.
He could just it could all just be in the holodeck. He
Yeah.
could be on the vineyards. A lot of options.
Just
for
a
Picard.
million Dix. What's the detective's name?
Dix.
Dix.
Dixon.
Harrison Dix.
No.
Holistic detective agency?
No,
Or
That's
no,
Dirk
no.
Gently. What,
Dirk
what's
Gently,
what's the
Dixon Hill.
Dixon Hill. There you go.
Dixon Hill, the fictional.
It's their Raymond Chandler knockoff.
Yes, exactly. The Big Goodbye was the name of the episode. It is totally their Chandler knockoff. All right, from Star Trek, and also I guess we should talk a little bit about Star Trek Discovery Season 2 trailer, which dropped at New York Comic Con. They are really closing in on convergence on the original series, which is a big concern for Star Trek fans, right? Because Star Trek was like, fans were like, okay, we get you want to tell a new story. We kind of want Star Trek to push forward, and with the Picard show, it will push forward to the end of the 24th century. It'll be set around 2399. But with Discovery, you're going backwards. Fine, let's tell a pre-TOS, pre-Enterprise story, but at some point, you're going to converge with the Enterprise.
What if the Picard show is just him like leading a bunch of programmers who have to fix the Y2.4K bug?
Oh my God. I don't think that would be the case. I think
It's
they
like a
would have
workplace drama.
The Daystrom Institute has got that figured out.
Okay, maybe
I'm sure.
you think that, but
Well, you gotta figure
programmers
out-
make the damnedest mistakes.
and you got to figure out how the clocks can be in sync with time dilation and all that.
Exactly.
Right. Discovery is converging with TOS to a point where you had, and this is minor spoilers if you hadn't seen season 1, you have the ship, you have the Enterprise seen at the end of the season. They've casted Captain Pike. They've casted number 1, and they showed it in the trailer. Rebecca Romaine is playing number 1.
Okay.
who was
Who was
only-
on the unaired pilot, right?
Yes, briefly seen.
the
She's a black
menagerie?
wid.
No, I can't.
No. Oh my God.
They cut up the episode with the brain thing and made that into the later episode. The unaired
cage.
pilot. The cage.
The
yeah.
cage. And they've cast a Spock, and you hear his voice in the trailer, and you see a glimpse of him. And to Kishore's point, what you're alluding to, he has a beard. It is bearded Spock. I think the actor has nailed the Spockiness
He
of
looks
it.
the part.
Looks the part, sounds the part. I think that even if you're a fan of Zachary Quinto's Spock in the J.J. Abrams, the Kelvin universe, I think this is a Spock that you could get used to, and you could feel like it's Spock.
It's too bad they couldn't have convinced Quinto to come down
That
to
wouldn't
TV.
make sense. That wouldn't make sense at all.
Why not? It's the same
No.
character. It's the divergence is 20 years earlier.
It's a temporal.
I guess.
It's a temporal divergence.
Just own it and just move forward. That's what I have to say.
And the Klingons look different, and there are some
What?
different birds of prey. The Klingons
I told you
have,
the Klingon thing is all.
the Klingons have hair now.
What?
Well,
What?
they were supposed to have hair but they didn't have hair in the first season. So they've redesigned the Klingons a bit.
Well, that's canon. I mean, between the first and second seasons of Star Trek, the Klingons got redesigned.
Yep. And so I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. All right. Let's go from Star Trek to Star Wars, because we got also this past week the first glimpses, a plot synopsis, and an image from the Star Wars TV series that will be launching next year with the Disney subscription program, the subscription they're offering. And the show, this is the one that's produced by Jon Favreau, I want to say, is called The Mandalorian. So set on the outskirts, on the outer rim, set in the outskirts of the galaxy, outside of maybe Imperial rule. It's going to be about bounty hunters, not Boba Fett necessarily.
Bounty hunters or mercenaries?
Mercenaries, bounty hunters. It's about a lone Mandalorian.
Huh.
And the first image shows this bounty hunter's armor, which looks really cool. A modernized take on the Boba Fett Mandalorian armor. And
Does he have a jetpack, Norm?
no jetpack that I could see. Cape, yes.
Okay.
Jetpack,
some
no.
sort of sawed-off Mandalorian gun.
Okay.
Helmet looks good. No
He looks
flip
cool.
down scope eyepiece.
Oh.
He looks good. It's a little stripped down from what we've seen with Boba Fett. I'm excited about this. Dave Filoni is directing the first episode.
Ooh.
Bryce Dallas Howard is directing an episode. And then this one. This one's for you, Will. Taika Waititi is directing an episode.
So they're sparing no expense.
They're
is what you're saying.
sparing no expense. So this will be a big deal. I hope no lightsabers. This is supposed to be set again between episode 6 and 7. I want to say, I don't think we'll see lightsabers. I think those should be just like another piece of the Star Wars universe.
Canonically, there's no lightsabers during that time, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're just hidden in cases and stuff, or in chests.
In bars.
Yeah. The final bit of pop culture news that we want to talk about is the Banksy.
This was amazing. This is
So-
an incredible thing.
A lot of speculation of what
I
went
still
down.
don't know if it's real.
Let's talk about how we heard, how the public heard about it, right? I guess it was Saturday during the day. We got news. Saturday morning, news outlets started reporting that at Sotheby's, a big auction of artwork. Now, Banksy has worked with auctioneers to auction off pieces of art. Him selling art is not a new thing. The artist known as Banksy. And so this is a piece that sold for equivalent of $1.2 million, right? A million
Girl
pounds.
holding the red balloon,
Yeah.
red heart balloon.
Very iconic Banksy piece. And then the moment the gavel went down, and there's now video of this, and previously...
There's video?
There's video. There's photos initially of just people gasping, which is why people didn't necessarily believe that it could have been an onion piece, right? But the piece, the artwork, went through the frame like a paper shredder, and half of it is shredded. Now, a couple questions. One,
Just a couple.
how did Sotheby's not know? Anyone even touching the frame, installing it?
Well, I mean, look, the output from this kind of handheld shredder is small. It's
Wait,
just a couple
but
of
just seeing
slots.
the vents. Just seeing...
Are there vents?
I mean, they're just seeing
How does
where
the
the
paper
gap
come out
is.
then?
There's a little slit on the bottom. You can
Right,
hide a
how
slit.
would you
can't
not
see that?
If someone's inspecting artwork, right? If you're Sotheby's, do you handle artwork in the frame or not in the frame?
Yeah, don't they
to verify?
authenticate?
You authenticate
I mean, it
when it's
depends on where it
typically
comes
out
from.
of the frame. Like when they acquire from Banksy
Yeah.
for an auction like this, or wherever the source was, because that's also unclear whether this is a reselling from someone who previously owned a Banksy piece. You take it out of the frame.
Look,
So the presumption.
you're worried about the wrong things here.
Well, we'll get to those other questions. The presumption is that Sotheby's has issued a statement that they did not know about this. They were.
I
not
think it's
involved.
safe to say we can believe that statement.
And if we believe that, because it is their reputation on the
Yes.
line as a art broker and with
Broker of
millions
fine
of dollars,
art,
like
yes.
if they were in on this, then the validity of a lot of their auctions can be held in question.
Yes.
So if they were not in on this, and assuming that the deal for this to be auctioned was such that it's handed off to them, they have to trust that it's Banksy, trust that the frame was part of the whole package.
They have to have an authentication process for an anonymous artist like Banksy. I mean,
Yep.
also, Banksy is only popularly anonymous. People in the art scene probably know who Banksy
Sure.
is.
Yes, and there's a lot of speculation. You read
Yeah.
the whole Wikipedia page
Yeah.
of like there's a whole documentary about the whole thing, right? So, assuming that that part was genuine, then the question is, how long do they have the frame and the art piece, and how was that powered? Was this like years in the making, months in the making, weeks in the making, days in the making? We don't know.
Well, lithium-ion batteries decay 50% over like a period of years, so it could have been in a case for 2 years and probably still work.
That seems like we want to believe that's
High
a long
risk.
con. Very high risk.
Yeah.
And then the final thing is, how was it activated so timely? So the theory, of course, is that someone was in the room, and there's now a lot of reports of a masked person being tackled by security, et cetera, et cetera. Was it Banksy himself?
It was the last auction of the day, so it wasn't like the gavel striking, triggering it or something like that.
Exactly.
presumably.
So, someone in on it was activating it. All of that totally fine. And if it was the case, bravo. right?
Also-
a wonderful piece of performance art.
The total price was bid up to the maximum, like his previous record exactly.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, like presumably some of the bidders were in on something. Eventually?
Whoever won the piece, congratulations to them.
Yeah,
because
they
they
won
have
the
something
lottery.
far more valuable than just the Banksy piece itself. And here's where the extra speculation comes into play. I think who was it I follow on Twitter?
Steve from
Yes,
Island
Steve
357.
Bowler from
Isle
ooh,
357.
Oh, yeah, they make the game. A VR game developer postulated that there could have been that the piece wasn't actually shredded. That the shredding itself was a piece of performance because there was a rolled up, already shredded piece that then got rolled out.
Oh,
And
like
if
a
you-
magic trick.
like
then.
like the coin, like the dollar bill magic trick.
that
Yeah.
if you measure from top to bottom the image and the frame, it's
They don't line
longer.
up.
They don't line up. It's
But which-
longer than what
I mean,
that would
what
make
come
me.
out.
That would be disappointing.
It's
That's true.
I mean, it really doesn't matter to me. Like the preservation of the original piece isn't the art that happened there. The art is the sleight of hand that caused a piece of artwork to be shredded
It was-
at the
and
conclusion of an
the
auction.
The
immediate
reactions
right,
of
the reactions.
people.
Yeah.
Yes, the gasp, and that's what they were going
Yeah,
for.
the real failure of the piece was that there wasn't video. But if there's video, then maybe there is no failure of the piece.
Yeah, let's just end this by saying that was spectacular.
is a-
I don't care if it's real or not. That was spectacular.
We talked about this at length on when I was playing games on Saturday night with some friends, and one of them is a pop artist of some renown, Mike Mitchell. And we were just like, it was a very fun conversation. Like, he was really excited about it. Like, this is the fucking coolest thing in a long time. And yeah, at first, like, there was hand wringing about the poor person who won the auction and whether they're and like, there's no, like, this is, you don't
The
make
poor person that has
yeah.
$1 million to spend on a Banksy. Ugh.
Yeah,
Life
but
is
B,
hard.
also the piece became instantly more valuable when it got worldwide coverage for this stunt. So props to them.
Did you see the other kind of artist stunts that people started sharing? Like the Banks thing was cool, but do you remember in the 1980s when this artist did this one thing?
He did the acid paints that the painting decayed over time.
I didn't read about that one. There was one artist who had a gallery, and I forgot the name of the artist, in New York, where he had it's a mechanical structure apparatus. There's a name for it, but like it was a two truss that pushing against the walls, and basically the turnstiles for the exhibition would slowly open this up, And so when a certain number of people had gone through the exhibit would collapse, and apparently the fire chief was very unhappy about this.
Yeah.
Because it would have collapsed a big building. It was put against like 2 supporting beams of an art gallery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's like enough people see this piece,
The building comes down.
and so it's total like game theory experiment of like people wanting to partake in it, and also how close you want to get.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens in like the poster world too, where people will do like a set that's like in order to see the actual art underneath, you have to destroy something, or like there's a lot of interesting stuff that happens in this space that's fun and is like it and parallels, like a lot of it is making like just the mechanics of the frame for the Banksy piece are fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Whether it's a real shredder or the dollar bill sleight of hand trick or whatever, it's a really interesting technical problem.
And it's something that could never be done again. You do this the once, and the impact it would never be as much as this.
Yeah.
Like it's you play it for the one-time effect.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, time to fly through some tech news.
All right.
All right, brace yourself.
I trust you, Keish.
You fixed it. Well done. All right. Google had a big event this week announcing hardware, even though almost all of it was leaked ahead of time. We're talking, of course, about the Pixel 3 phone and the Pixel 3 XL. Kishore, what's new with the Pixel 3?
Pixel 3 has a notch because apparently phones are regulated to have notches
It's the
now.
future.
It is the future. You can software eliminate the notch.
I like that a lot.
It'll put the black bar up there for you if you like.
Why? That's such a bad idea.
Why? Why does it matter? Let people do their
it's
thing.
a toggle on and off. It's not a big
I guess that's
deal.
the Android thing. Let people do their thing.
I-
see less screens so that your visual tick will be less.
Look, the part of the screen on my iPhone 10 that has the stuff up there, if it was a black background or if it's the same background as the rest of the window, the same data is going to be there.
Yeah, I'm not too
Like
worried.
it's just
presumably
an aesthetic thing.
Presumably, if you enable the mode that eliminates the notch, and I use eliminate lightly because it technically is still there. All you're doing is literally putting black tape essentially over those parts, the other on the left and right of it to make it look consistent. You're losing screen space.
No, you're not, because this time and stuff is still up in that space.
It's not in that space.
Yeah, it is.
So if you say don't show me the notch, then how do you see the time?
It's still up there.
shifts down.
It just
It shifts
no,
down.
No. There's still the space. The space on the right and left of the notch are still used. It's just always a black background.
Oh, I thought it was just turned.
No.
Okay,
that would be
then
madness.
that's fine. Yeah, exactly. That would be
Yeah,
madness.
it's literally an aesthetic thing. So like, if you don't like the cutout out of your phone's UI,
so it is just a black background.
it is
as opposed
literally just
to-
a background for the height of the notch.
That's totally fine.
That seems fine.
Now, okay, I should qualify. I'm basing this off of a thing that I read on ours, and I looked at the infographic but didn't read the entire story. So maybe the infographic was them saying, "Hey, this is how this should work."
Oh. Well, anyway, let's talk about the actual Pixel 3. Basically, display is better, faster processor, all of that kind of stuff that you expect with a new phone. I think people haven't had hands-on for a long time at this point, but generally speaking, they're saying the camera is just as good and like slightly better than the Pixel 2 XL camera, which I have a Pixel 2 XL. It is fantastic.
It's very good.
The camera. They made a lot of play about the digital zoom feature that's new, and people are saying it works like a digital zoom.
When you say camera is better, and it's more about the philosophical approach that Google and Android takes with the image processing than Apple takes. Apple has the approach that they think they know what you want, and so they will do some computational processing and computational photography to smooth out some of the blemishes, and you don't see as much grain. There's just more aggressive noise reduction. Whereas on the Pixel phones, if you're a photographer who wants to see the grain, because you can do your own noise reduction, you're going to be happy with a purer image that comes out of that sensor.
I mean, that's just how Android has been forever, right? So there's not really a change here. I mean, we can talk about the inner guts of this phone a lot, but it's a small iteration on the Pixel 2. It kept the good parts of the Pixel 2, like how the camera works, and expanded on the display and made that a lot better. That like we should talk about the key features that rolled out though.
I'm
because
completely
there's-
wrong on the notch. I got it backwards. Sorry.
Oh, so
Yes.
when you
So it is
black out the
stupid.
notch,
It is
pushes
stupid.
things.
It pushes everything down.
That's
That is super
stupid.
dumb. So the thing I saw was another Android phone that does it the smart way
Okay,
and not. Apologies, corrections.
that's a stupid solution.
really dumb.
Yeah, if you embrace the notch at that point.
Yeah.
Or download a skin that will give you exactly that what you want, which is the black background with the information. Anyway,
Sorry for interrupting.
Go ahead.
Keish.
No, it's totally fine. Let's I want to talk about the software feature that makes a ton of sense for me. I mean, we talked after I/O about their AI phone call feature, and we
cooked
got
one. You mean?
Yeah, where you could have your Google Assistant make a phone call to like the barber or whatever restaurant.
I'm waiting for that to roll out. I'm
And
really excited about
this
it.
one got like a half feature of that I think is great. The call screening, where it will. Did you see this feature?
Yeah.
I think this is the best feature where it will answer a call for you and answer with an AI voice. It gives you the readout on the screen. It allows you to screen, and if it's telemarketers, and I've seen an uptick of spam calls to my
totally.
phone.
Me too.
I think everyone has. This is an awesome way to get rid of that garbage.
It'd be much better if the phone system just didn't let people spoof phone numbers and dial in and break the existing system. But yeah, this is a good
Until they run the
half measure, I guess.
telecoms.
Yeah.
And so this is really an announcement just about the hardware because we got all the software features in the I/O announcements earlier this year.
So the question I have is how. So I had a Pixel 2 XL and sent it back because it was too big.
And the Pixel 3 XL is still really big.
The chin and the forehead on that phone were enormous, and made it not fit in my pants pocket. Frankly, is it still same size, same bigness?
Pixel 3 XL is 6.3 inch, so it is big.
So
it's big.
I really want a Pixel 3 if I want a Pixel, not a Pixel 3 XL probably.
Yeah, and Pixel 3 doesn't have the notch. It's just sort of like the standard
Okay,
look
normal
and
phone.
feel. But I am not sold on this notch thing anyways, so I feel like that's not a big deal to me.
I find that the notch is something I worried about for about 3 days after I got my iPhone 10 and then stopped noticing entirely.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't like about it is that actually if you're holding the phone sideways watching a movie or something, then where you hold the phone on the top left corner when you're holding it with your left hand can trigger the touchscreen, and that's annoying.
Yeah.
I think the only thing this announcement really nailed is the fact that they kept it sub 1,000, which I think is really important for the Pixel sort of ecosystem.
But they still increase the price.
Yes, but it's 900 for the XL and 800 for the Pixel 3, which is still like
That's
ton
a
of
lot
money.
of money for phones.
But I think it's important, like since Apple crossed that threshold, I think
just rocketed right through it.
Yeah.
They didn't cross it. It's like I bought computers that cost less than an
$1,500.
iPhone XS Max.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, the problem isn't that it costs that much. The problem is that they've run on a business model that expect people to buy a new one every 2 years.
Yeah.
And
I think that's probably changing though.
It better be, and it gives permission for a lot of other manufacturers to start charging that much. Like Razer, their flagships are now $800.
Well, they're selling a niche phone though, don't you
It
think?
is so expensive
I mean, like, what's the value? Like, my phone is my primary computer for work, right?
and for a lot of people, it is
Yeah.
the phone and the tablet are their primary computer. And I think for a tablet, if your iPad is or your new Android or Pixel Slate is your primary computer, spending $800 on that is totally fine. But the phone, there's only so much you can do on the phone too.
For me, like I used to think nothing of spending $600 on a phone every year because I use it a lot. It's a business expense. When they cross that $1,000 threshold, it becomes an every other year or maybe even every third year. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
I mean, the batteries are good for what, 1,500 cycles theoretically, although that hasn't been the case in the past. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, and batteries are not consumables. They are
Right.
They have been, but now they are acknowledged as when you buy the phone, don't expect the battery to last. It's a thing that will affect electric cars too.
Mm-hmm.
Engines will last decades.
Well,
Electric car batteries, not so much.
10 years.
we're talking about a cost of $40 or $50 a month for these phones.
Yeah.
On a 2-year cycle,
That's leasing.
which is a fair amount of money.
You can
Like,
lease a electric Fiat for $99 a month now in California.
What are you
So-
gonna get more out of for your life? Well,
Right.
if you're addicted to Instagram, You know,
I don't.
I mean, I use my phone more than my computer, but a 2-year life cycle is actually the problem. If that's what their business model is based off.
I mean, if you lived in a world where it was easy to swap the battery out, that wouldn't be a problem, right?
And none of these
2+
phones
year
you can
life
do that.
cycle, and none of them you can.
Let's quickly talk about the other things.
all right.
So
There's
they
the
launched,
Slate.
yeah,
there's
the
their new
Slate.
tablet. It's
I have a little more time, also, just FYI.
Okay.
They have it starts at $600 and goes up to $1,600. Not even including like the accessories, like the keyboard or the pen, and that's because the processing on the inside can range from a 4 GB RAM, 32 gig SSD, and 8th gen Core Celeron processor to at the top more than twice as much, 16 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage, and a Core i7. Now, why do you need 16 gigs of RAM and a Core i7 on something that's going to run Chrome OS?
You don't.
You don't. Storage, I get. But
Do you need storage on Chrome OS?
media. They want you to ingest.
Oh, they want
media.
you to put. They
They
want you to
put
download
all
stuff
your
from
photos,
the store
and all your photos
and watch movies
on
and stuff
there.
on. Okay,
Exactly.
that makes sense.
And 256 reasonable. We're not talking about the 512 on phones.
Like,
now.
Hey, this
yeah.
is desktop level processing in a tablet.
I don't think Chrome OS needs it. Get that entry level.
And
You'll be fine.
I mean, maybe in a couple years, like people are going to be using Photoshop more regularly on Chrome OS, but that doesn't seem to be the case right now. This is meant to be a competitor to Surface, right?
Does it have TensorFlow cores? That's what I want to know.
I don't think so.
No. It is meant to be a competitor to Surface. And the thing that I think hurts it, even though it's a 12.9 inch display or something, and very high resolution, LCD, 12.3 inch display, sorry, is that the keyboard doesn't do what the Surface Pro keyboard does, which is the Surface Pro keyboard. And Microsoft's best thing they did with their Surface is design that magnetic keyboard to attach across the entire lower lip of the screen, so you can actually use it on your lap.
So
It
it's
adds
not
the
flappy.
rigidity. The
Yeah.
rigidity for the keyboard on your lap is so important, and neither the iPad Pro keyboards nor the Google Slate keyboards, those are great probably on the desk if you have like a rigid surface put it on. Well, on your lap, which is how a lot of people use their laptops, it is insufficient.
I mean, in fairness, it took Microsoft 3 generations of Surfaces to get to the point that thing actually worked the way they said it did.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we'll see if it continues. But yeah,
There's a couple things that are questionable, like they don't have a headphone jack on this. I don't get that. Like
Even-
on a
even the
tablet,
iPhone.
What is that?
it's the 21st century, man. You don't need
Even
wires
the iPad.
anymore.
Yeah.
I wish it had an SD slot, but I guess that's sort of going out of vogue anyway. So
Yeah, why would you just beam it over from your phone? You can use Bluetooth. It'll be great. It's going to be
Alright.
a great future.
There's also the Google has their new Amazon Spot Show competitor. It's the Home Hub. This is Google. They said at I/O this year they would start launching Google Homes with displays. Lenovo has one, and now Google has their own hub.
So the interesting thing about this, so it's basically a piece of hardware designed to run Google Assistant. And the interesting thing about this is that all of the third-party ones are running an Android-based version of the OS, and this one is running, I believe, a souped-up version of the Chromecast OS.
Called Assistant OS.
Yeah.
So custom HTML app,
Yeah,
which is better.
they did it
Maybe.
because in an interview they said they did it because they could.
I think there's some benefits for YouTube viewing because of but we have to wait and see the stability of this. For me, there's two kind of questionable things about this. I love the integration with the Google ecosystem. So like my main complaint about the Echo Show I have is beyond some usability things, it's not connected to any media ecosystem. So I can't play YouTube on it. This takes care of that. But no front-facing camera. So now it can't be used as a video device.
Well,
That makes no sense to me.
It's
But they don't have a
competitor-
video platform, do they? It's
well,
cross-
the Lenovo one. So within the Home Assistants, right? If you're stuck in Google, you want to use Google stuff, you have the choice between $150, which is this hub device, pretty good price with a screen. Lenovo one's $200. Lenovo one does have a camera, but it only works not even with Hangouts. It
Duo?
only works with freaking
Duo.
Duo.
I'm probably fine.
But
I'm fine without any of these things, to be honest. These all seem bad.
I like this kind of device in the kitchen. I think there's usefulness in that very particular scenario.
Why not just put your phone on the table?
Well,
'Cause that's what I do.
I think I completely agree. If you look at the design of this thing, it's a funky design because it reads as if you're supposed to be able to take that screen off of that mesh speaker
Right.
part in the bottom. And if that was the case, that would be much more useful. If that was like a dock for something that was like a tablet,
But then they have batteries and all sorts of. It would be way more expensive.
it would be more expensive. But that user case wise, that would make a little more sense.
I mean, honestly, what this product should be is a OS that you can run on your old Android phone that does exactly what this thing does.
But
Right.
it's not new and shiny, and they can't sell you new hardware.
Well, but I mean,
But they're not a hardware company.
they don't want they
They're
just
not
want
a
the
hardware
information. They don't want the
Exactly.
hardware.
Exactly.
The double down on smart home features with this, it seemed an odd choice.
Well, it
too.
connects direct to like Bluetooth lights. I mean, look, they're all looking at the smart home as an actual market for the first time in 30 years and want to own that. That's why we're seeing it, Samsung, Google, Amazon, everybody's doing smart hubs.
Yeah, it seems early. Though.
It makes the smart home, the Samsung purchase of smart things 4 years ago, make a lot more sense.
and good for those companies.
And I will say, having done all the lights and all that business, it started out really dopey, and once you have everything plugged in and it's all working right, it's kind of nice. It's not spend $2,000 nice, but it's nice.
Yeah. Last bit of Google news, not announced at this event, but RIP Google Plus. Google Plus is going away.
Slow tier.
I assume you guys talked about Google Inbox getting killed in favor of the
Yeah.
increasingly
we're unhappy.
shitty Gmail interface. So yeah, I'm like, take those Google Plus resources and move them back over to Inbox and turn Inbox back
What
on.
Google
please.
Plus resources? Was
I don't-
anyone working on this?
Look, we knew Google Plus was doomed 3 years ago when they all stopped posting on Google Plus, right? When Sergey Brin and Larry Page posted their last Google Plus updates in 2012.
And what do they post on Medium now?
They don't even post.
What did someone say? Medium's
It's like they have Medium for billionaires. It's a different site.
Medium is live journal for
Executives,
for executives of
CEOs.
failed startups.
Yeah, that's right. Seems right. I posted on Medium.
That seems harsh.
Too real. All right, that's it for.
Well,
Yeah.
wait. We should mention there is a hack. The thing about Google Plus going down is it came on the heels of a security vulnerability that they covered up, and we have very few details yet still about what data was exposed through that hack. At least when we're recording this, and so that is not very Google-esque. Let's
Yeah.
just say what happened there.
It's especially given how tight their ecosystem was integrated with Google Plus. Presumably, you could have a lot of access to a lot of important data. So yeah, not googly.
All right.
Where would you like to go, Norm?
Let's quickly talk about, in terms of leaks and hacks, this Bloomberg report. I'm not going to give it a ton of credence because it's a lot of questions about authenticity of this report, but that there's tiny chips in some of the servers that the big companies such as Apple and Amazon have acquired
This
from
is the super micro thing.
Yep, from Chinese companies. Apple has vehemently denied this,
Amazon,
and
too.
Amazon has as well. And so at some point, the truth will come out. But the point is that, it's in the data centers, you got to know what's in your hardware, and people can make really small chips. And I don't know how exactly this will work if you're talking about a closed system where the data centers have no access to the internet. But like, how do you get that information out?
So we used to, like, there were stories pre-Snowden even of the NSA intercepting routers, leaving factories, and replacing the firmware on the routers with firmware that would quietly send data about traffic and metadata and stuff when they were going to certain foreign countries, right? From factories in China to Iran and Syria and North Korea, presumably. This is both a thing that seems like it would be very easy to do and a thing that when you start talking to electrical engineers, they say would be very complicated to do. So I don't know. I really, the Bloomberg thing seemed to be very well reported. They're a trustworthy, reliable source that when they say we have multiple sources on this stuff, I tend to believe them. And it's unlike Apple or Amazon to unequivocally deny something that could potentially be true. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, this could be the new Snowden leak in terms of how important this is. But again, we don't know. All right, moving on. Let me continue pulling my show notes. Nope, don't want to talk about that. Don't want to talk about that. Oh, you know what? let's talk about Telltale, because we didn't talk about this last week. We missed the week of the podcast when this news came out. That, of course, very sad news. Telltale had to shut down its operations and lay off several hundred of its
all of the employees,
including several hundred people.
And the offices are here in the Bay Area, so like I know somebody
we all
that
know
worked.
Telltale
We all
people,
know people.
Yep. And if you're following the saga of this, it just sounds like terrible all around in terms of all the circumstances and business decisions, and even how they announced this, the layoffs. And the newest news, though, is that Skybound is picking up. Skybound's Robert Kirkman, who created The Walking Dead, is picking up production of The Walking Dead, this last season of it, and presumably working and hiring some.
I was just scratching my
ear. Are they
sorry.
hiring some of the ex-Telltale employees? Probably not hiring them full time.
It's unclear.
They will be working with, it is the faintest of silver linings in this terrible
Just
saga.
to be clear, the way Telltale was shut down was unfortunate in that they announced the layoffs and the closing with like 10 days to go in the month of September, and cut people loose with no severance and no insurance, and like their insurance expired on the 1st of October. Like it was very sudden and kind of seemingly out of nowhere for the people involved,
including people who had just moved to the
across
Bay Area,
the country or even
country.
internationally.
That's right.
So yeah, it sucks. Like at the end of the day, it's great that more episodes of Walking Dead are getting made. They're not on the store. It's not on the store right now. You can't buy the last season right now. But
I'm fortunate. It's the nice way to put it. It was kind of shitty.
Yeah, I mean, look, anytime you have a company that's been operating for as long as Telltale does, it's shitty. But it seems like this could have been handled with more transparency for the people involved. Although, I mean, like the story is that they had funding and then the funding fell through at the last minute. So, I mean, that happens to everybody, I guess, at some point, maybe, if you're unlucky.
In other games news, Microsoft announced that they're going to be investing in game streaming, a new project called Project xCloud. And this comes on the heels of Google announcing a very similar streaming type service using, of course, its YouTube backbone. But this is theoretically low latency, on live style game streaming with both support for physical controls, or if you're just on a mobile device, on screen controls. How are those buttons going to work? The shoulder buttons. How's that going to work?
So Google's been running the Odyssey test, right? It's running right now as a beta for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and it seems to be for the people I've talked to that have tried it. It seems to work pretty well.
I mean, that type of game doesn't necessarily require the most immediate of responses.
Yeah, you're not going to play a Counter-Strike Go or a fighting game or something like that on this service ever, I don't think, just because of the speed of light. But like Microsoft seems to think that this is the opportunity. Microsoft and UB and a bunch of the current big publishers are treating like this is the opportunity to continue growing the kind of traditional gaming market beyond the space that it's at now, meaning people who are willing to invest $300 to $500 in gaming hardware.
And if you believe that Google story from 2 weeks ago, they're streaming video thing. So this is the future.
I don't think it's the future.
I think it's a long way off.
I think it's the future for people who like to play Fortnite on their phones.
What does pretend for dedicated console gaming? When we're talking about consoles costing $300 to $400, those are loss leaders. Like when we're talking about,
not anymore, not so much.
Depending on the hardware. I mean, some of that hardware, the graphics processing hardware, because NVIDIA's got to make its margins, AMD's got to make its margins. Those are expensive chips to put in there.
But I mean, an Xbox One X is selling for $500. Presumably, I mean, that might have been a loss leader for a couple of months, but by the time they sell 10 million of them, then they'll be fine.
Those phones, the margins on the phones are a lot. Then,
yeah, the margins on the phones are great. Yeah. Hey, P.S.
Yeah.
When people stop buying as many apps, then Apple wants to make some cash on cheddar on the back end, on the front end rather than the back.
Mm-hmm. Do we see a world we think there'll be hybrid consoles where some of the graphics, some of the games, maybe backgrounds are rendered remotely and streamed, and foregrounds and characters are rendered locally? I
think it's much more likely that we see like a $99 Xbox Next that does streaming games for, across the entire backlog of Xbox games, and is tied to a Games Pass type service, plus the opportunity to buy new stuff early.
Because we all need more subscriptions in our life.
Look, $10 a month here, $10 a month there. Pretty soon you're talking $3,000-$4,000 a month. It's what the faceless multinationals want.
All right. And finally, last bit of Harvard rumor news is that Nintendo may update its Switch hardware next year.
That seems soon.
I think that sounds right.
2 years?
Switch 2 years, and this is going to not.
And they
be
had a massive
replacing.
hardware vulnerability too, which probably accelerated things.
And it makes sense that they could make more money with the Switch selling so well. They could make more money with the Switch Pro, right? With a high resolution screen,
Switch Lite,
or Switch Lite, right? Yeah. There's a lot of opportunity for them to have the same software compatibility.
The battery doesn't last even that long.
Yeah. I think the other opportunity for something that's portable like the Switch is, I have one. My kid probably at some point in the future will use it enough that I'll want to get a second one.
Hand me down those first gens.
And give her that bad first gen. I'll take the nice shiny new second gen.
What if it's a smaller one made for smaller hands?
That's too bad.
Wow.
We're getting the big one for big hands.
Oh, okay. I mean, it would be smart for them to maybe two versions, a Switch Pro and a Switch Lite.
Switch Max, a Switch S Max.
Switch X Max.
Yeah, a Switch S Max Pro.
Yep.
Yep.
Face ID, fingerprint sensor.
Yeah.
A notch for no reason.
I mean, the Switch only runs at 1080. Maybe they do want 4K.
Interesting thing happened in games. PlayStation announced that they're allowing cross-platform for Fortnite and potentially other games like
they are
potentially Rocket League and Minecraft and stuff like that.
This is a big issue with them. It comes on the heels of them also allowing in the near future game name changes.
Yeah, username changes.
Finally.
I've been playing Minecraft with my daughter, and I play on the PC, and she plays on the Switch, and it's very it's like magic that we can do that across platforms. It still feels like magic.
It should not feel like magic, though.
But like I can sit on the couch and play on the phone, and she can play on the Switch. It's very cool.
Is Minecraft?
Microsoft. Yeah, Microsoft.
It's why they bought it.
Can't do it on PlayStation yet.
No. All right. Before we move on to our next segment, I want to thank the sponsor that makes this episode possible, and that is Lutron's Caseta Smart Lighting. Caseta by Lutron Smart Lighting Control, brought to you by Lutron, pioneers in smart home technology. With Caseta, you can schedule your lights to come on at dusk, so your family always comes back to a well-lit home. It takes your smart speaker, like your Alexa, Google Home, Apple HomePod, and makes it more powerful by letting you control the lights with your voice. Caseta is the most connected smart lighting brand, and it works with more smart home devices than any other smart lighting brand, letting you pair lights with things like security devices, thermostats, and music systems like Nest, Sonos, and more. We have the Caseta system set up at our home. We're pretty lazy these days. Danica's very immobile because we have a baby coming, so we just use our app and adjust all our lights that way. So get smart lighting and get it the smart way with Caseta by Lutron. Search for Caseta. That's CASETA. Or check out Lutron, LUTRON.com to learn more. Caseta by Lutron. Welcome home to peace of mind.
Now it's time for a moment of science. So 2 minutes and 2 seconds after a rocket took off, we had a fault register in the Soyuz capsule. And we just got reports now of what the actual communication between the capsule and mission control in Russia was. And here's how the story goes: is just after the rocket booster separation, it registered a fault. Automated system kicked in and noticed this fault and forced the capsule to essentially eject.
So there wasn't even a human, nobody pulled the trigger, pushed the button, whatever.
As far as we understand now, like ground control had that capability to do it, and I assume the astronauts aboard had capability to do it. But as far as we know, it was an automated thing. Basically, the acceleration was less than they needed to get where they needed to go.
Oh.
So it was
like
something really,
or something
bad
something
happening. Really dangerous. So when it separates, they actually went into free fall, and then you hear over command that the Russian cosmonaut mentions they're pulling 6.7 Gs as they start descent. And so they do this hard descent, and usually you don't want the capsule to come straight down. That's a good way to pancake your astronauts. It always tries to go laterally to kind of take a lot of that force. So they were pulling 6.2 Gs and then with 6.7 Gs, and then within about a minute.
So that means that means a man that weighs 200 pounds weighs 1,200 in change.
And typically 4 Gs is about the maximum that they pull. And direction matters with Gs too. So if it is sort of in the Z direction, it's sort of our body can compensate. When it's moving laterally, it's much
Z
harder.
means towards your back?
Z
or towards your feet?
I mean in the Y. When it's going up and down, our heart can compensate because we're just sort of pumping blood up and down. But when you're moving in the Z direction or in the X direction with those G loads, our heart has a lot harder time compensating. So we don't know at this point, but I would bet that the 2 astronauts on board actually passed out in their descent with that kind of G load. They should have. If they didn't, it's incredible that they didn't. Within about 30 seconds, the G load was down to about 2.7. They landed safely. They reunited with their families. We have now 3 astronauts aboard the ISS that are essentially marooned.
Well, no, they're not.
They're not another
They're
Soyuz?
not marooned in the sense there is a Soyuz capsule docked aboard, so they can actually do a forcible launch away from the ISS and land safely on Earth.
They always leave almost always leave in the same capsule they come in.
Yes, so it is possible they're not stuck up there, but they are not going to abandon the space station because then there'll be no one aboard.
Right.
And so the next launch window, I think, is December 19th or 20th. It's inevitable that they're not going to hit that launch window because there is a rocket failure aboard.
Yeah.
And usually that means they delay things, 3 to 6 months.
There's an inquest, right?
Yeah. And so right now, I'm sure this is happening. It's not public knowledge, at least when we're recording this. They're doing an inventory of how much oxygen, water, and food they have. Inevitably, they plan for what's called a skip mission, where something goes wrong, so they have enough time for the next one to come aboard. We're waiting to hear what went wrong. Chris Hadfield did an awesome Periscope this afternoon afterwards where he talked about what the planning looks like. I encourage people to watch it. Just go to his Twitter feed and you can watch it. And the jarring thing he said was, when something goes on in a rocket, it inevitably is something complicated. It's not something simple.
Yeah.
And so that's his worry.
Millions of moving parts.
Yeah, that's his worry, because if it's something complicated, that means it's going to take a while for them to figure it out.
I mean, on the other hand, this is the most reliable launch platform in the world, I think, right?
100%, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like there's an immediate pressing need for food or oxygen or water on the station. They always have a backlog of at least a few months, and there are both progress launches are probably going to be on hold as a result of this inquest, but SpaceX and Orbital Systems, hold on, I can't remember the name of that company. Orbital Systems, or the Cygnus ones. There are at least 2 companies servicing, and plus Japan launches occasionally too, right? I guess they just did one, didn't they?
More than likely a Soyuz is going to have to go back up.
Yeah.
And so we're in a waiting game.
To get people there.
Yeah, get people there. So it seems like everything's going to be fine and everyone is safe. But this is absolutely going to be like a tenuous time.
It's the same as after the Columbia disaster when we had no shuttle flights to the space station for a year and a half.
What was interesting, and just as a last thought on this, when I watched Chris's Periscope, people asked him, what do you think the mood of the astronauts on board was during this? Because obviously, if I was on there, I would just be screaming. Yeah, right.
I think that might. But look, after watching First Man, I think during any launch, any of us would just be screaming.
Yeah,
even if it was going great.
And he said he believes their reaction was frustrated. They would be frustrated that they weren't going to space.
Frustrated and then maybe unconscious.
And maybe, yeah, and angry, but which is not the emotion I would expect, but it is kind of that astronaut model of they want to work the problem, but this problem is out of their control.
Well, the problem with problems during launch and really descent is that you don't have time to work the problem.
Yeah, exactly. So I understand that. I'm glad everyone is safe, and we're in a waiting game right now.
Oh, oof. How much oxygen is up on the ISS, and how much can be recycled? Water can be recycled, but
I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, that's one of the main things that they bring up when they bring with the fuel stuff, right? And when you're talking about like a Progress ship, they have hydrogen and oxygen in the tanks. And
Well, it's
like
water. I guess they make oxygen by splitting
water with electricity. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much they have, what the capacity left is. They have 3 on board. 2 are coming up in the Soyuz mission. Like Will said, there's ways to resupply the ISS more easily than it is to send replacements. I mean, really, the bummer is they're going to have to be up there longer than was intended.
Well, when we went to Johnson and talked to the people who make the food for the station, this is one of the things we talked about. I don't think it made the video, but you know, they went from having 6 people to having 3 people, so automatically the food is 3/5 was going to go 3/5 longer than it did. Is that right? I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's going to last longer than it did before. All the consumables will. The big question is, without the Progress modules to do the orbit boosts, like I think that might end up being the things. I don't know if they can do the orbit boosts with the SpaceX capsules or the Orbital Sciences capsules.
I don't know the answer to that.
So
either.
yeah,
I'm sure all of this is being worked out, and things have, like, contingencies are always planned for here. So I'm sure the astronauts aboard the ISS are safe. It's just like one of those things where everyone is sort of on needles until we get answers on what went wrong.
And we're closing in. We're 18 years into manned habitation and constant manned habitation in space. I don't think anybody wants to, like, that's a pretty good streak. We don't want to break that if we don't have to.
And I'm sure I've heard behind the scenes from friends of mine that, you know, there's a lot of arguments right now on how long the U.S. is going to fund the ISS.
Yeah, right now, it's not that long.
Yeah, it's to 2025. Yeah. And so they're worried that this will accelerate the defunding.
Especially given the current administration.
We have time for a quick VR minute?
Let's do it.
The VR Minute. Virtual reality this week.
I'm just going to knock through some quick hits. First of all, some PSVR announcement. It's the 2nd anniversary of PSVR, and they announced that Borderlands 2 VR is coming out later this year.
The best Borderlands.
With Gearbox on that. Now, unfortunately, not too many details. It will be single player only, so no multiplayer, which takes a lot of the fun out of the experience. But Borderlands is very popular. It's a lot of humor. The single player campaign is very fun, and having just hand track controllers for all these wild weapons.
Is it an aim gun?
Fun.
Aim
PS Move, yeah, the Move controllers.
But not the.
Oh, the aim. I actually don't know. Those are the
controller.
details that we do not have currently. The PS aim gun has worked great for Firewall 0 Hour. And
Farpoint.
And Farpoint, yeah, was the other one. I think also you can use it in Arizona Sunshine for PSVR as well. We'll do a weekly reminder that if you have a PSVR device, you should check out Astrobot Rescue. It's one of the best VR games made, period, and it's become so successful that PlayStation's going to issue a demo if you just want to try. I don't know if it'll be the first world out of 5, but the demo will be free, and of course, and that when that comes out, you should absolutely try that if you're not convinced already by our praise. Next on the list, Alchemy Labs. Now, Alchemy Labs, owned by Google, they made Job Simulator, of course, and Vacation Simulator, but they announced last week an experiment from their R&D using, of course, makes sense, AR Core, because that's Android's AR. So what they're doing is a phone. They can use the phone as a track device around a person to film mixed reality, kind of.
Oh, wow. So they can clip the person out using the depth camera?
I don't think they're doing that, but they can use the phone as a window, at least, into the VR world. They can synchronize the person playing in VR and then using the phone for a spectator to walk around them and to see maybe an avatar, but to see their space, and which allows for not only spectator experiences, but also potentially some asynchronous gaming experiences.
That's really cool.
Currently, that stuff is being rendered on a desktop and being streamed to the phone, but they think that that's just their experiment. They can totally get that rendered locally in the future, depending on the.
Is that out so you can try it?
It is not out so you can try it, unfortunately. But I think this is a path going forward. One of the problems with sharing VR is how do you let people enjoy that space while being in a pretty isolated experience? How do you have it locally social? And mirroring what you see onto the TV is one solution, but if other people can just download a companion app and start using their phone, and all these phones now have pretty decent AR pass-through abilities and world tracking, inside-out world tracking abilities, you can let them appear into your VR spaces. So it's right in line with what Alchemy Labs was doing with their mixed reality stuff before they were bought by Google, and it makes sense that they would be continuing it after they've been bought.
Have you
by
guys
Google.
tried Creed?
I have not played Creed from Servios, the boxing game.
Creed's very good.
Is it good?
It's interesting.
I will have.
It's
have
worth
to try it
checking out.
Yeah.
Highly. I would recommend it.
And then Oculus has now finally released their Dash 2.0 core out of beta. It's out of beta, the whole revamp. This is their launcher, essentially. It lets you have a space to walk in and eventually let people hopefully join in that space, but you can kind of decorate it out right now. There are not a lot of new Halloween decorations, and now that is a little more stable, and you should download it if you're on the Oculus platform. Jeremy and I played on the Oculus Go recently, Cloudland's mini golf on the Go. It's 4-player. If you guys have an Oculus Go, we can all jump in and play some mini golf and play some putt-putt in 3DOF.
I don't think you know this about me, but I placed 9th in a $10,000 mini golf tournament once.
What was
the
your
price
payout?
for that?
$0.
Oh,
and
what?
some shame.
Wait, fifth place is in the winnings?
10,000 people?
$10,000.
Oh, dollars.
I think it was a top 3 money.
Ooh, that's a lot. That's a big purse.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Yeah. Good winnings. And then going back to Leap Conference, LeapCon, the big hardware announcements for LeapCon, or product announcements for LeapCon, at least notable ones, is that early next year they're hoping to have 2 controller support, which I think is a big deal, because while they do have a 6DOF controller, having a second hand, they use magnetic tracking, much like the Razer Hydra or the STEM system. If they can get that working, 2 hands in 6DOF, while not perfect hand presence, is going to at least allow for a lot more interaction.
Hands are important, it turns out.
Well, they also do hand tracking, and the Dr. Grog boards has hand tracking for
that
force fields. Like, you know, you put your hand out there, you can swat the enemies and blow up the rockets. But buttons, two hands with touchpads and buttons, I think allows for better interaction.
That seems important.
The problem is that if that's not the standard, then people won't develop for that as a standard, and I think it needs to ship with that.
I think it's safe at this point to assume that whatever the final consumer version of that device is the standard, not what the dev kits are.
Yes. And then, which is the funny thing about this conference, because they rolled out 16 different experiences and companies working with things, including ILM with a Porg experience.
Is it pork roasting?
And it's not pork roasting. I didn't actually get to try it, but these sound like consumer-facing things, or things that you would want people out there to play, but they're not. It's for the however many thousands of developers right now who have these headsets. So I don't know if they need to be polished. But I'm glad that they're putting the resources in figuring it out.
From the early days of VR development, it's really good to have demo experiences that people who have the headsets can try. That was the big difference between the Oculus launch and the Vive launch. On the Vive launch, Valve handed out keys, and you got Tilt Brush and the first level of Job Simulator and Fantastic Contraption. So people had tangible gameplay experiences for the user experience for that stuff, versus the Oculus launch, where they handed a lot of headsets, but there wasn't a lot of sample code or sample applications, and people,
not until the second, the touch controller.
Exactly,
which is what they learned.
And the touch controllers the launch was much better. The UX was much better for the users. So, I think it's good that, even though this is a little bit weird for a dev kit, I think it's good that Magic Leap is doing it.
Awesome. All right, and that does it for this week's episode. Will, thank you so much for joining.
Of course.
Anything new in your world you want to share?
We're still making cartoons with VR. That's pretty much it. I play games on Twitch.
You had an awesome visit to Taj Mahal. Check out the Twitter moment about it.
The jumping into the canyon adjacent to the Grand Canyon was my more favorite. I did that on my 50th birthday a few weeks ago. It was a lot of fun.
All right, you can find Will at Will Smith.
Anything coming up on the site you want to plug?
We have Adam's Incognito Walk from New York Comic Con this year, and then his interviews that he did will be rolling out in the coming days. Interview I did with Richard Taylor and Greg Broadmoor from What Are Game Shop at LeapCon will be up on the site, I think, tomorrow, and just general goodness.
Cool.
Jeremy will be back next week. Sorry for all of this. We have an outro from Oz Muso. Muso? Let's see how this goes.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Tested.
Do you think it's okay to drive stone? Stone, stone, stone. Get a DUI. Stone, 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 stone. to not get behind the wheel. Stone.
I'm glad Nitsa didn't
That's
support this episode. Ah!
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye, everybody.